At the beginning of the story, we see a dangerous American prison where many inmates were working. In this prison, we see a young man named Paul who works here as a prison guard. Paul was in the washroom at this time and was having great difficulty urinating because he had some kind of infection. Just then, his fellow guard came there and told Paul that a new prisoner had arrived. Outside, another guard named Percy was escorting a large, broad prisoner. Percy kept repeating, "Dead man walking, dead man walking." This meant that this prisoner would soon die because he had been sentenced to death. Percy was a very nasty man and he treated the prisoners very badly. After this, the prisoner was taken inside where Paul was present. Paul took this prisoner inside the cell and asked his name. The prisoner gave his name as John Coffey. The prisoner was extremely large in size, but his mind was completely childlike. He asked Paul if the lights stay on at night, saying, "I'm afraid of the dark." To this, Paul told him that it's always lit here, so not to worry. Before leaving the cell, John extended his hand toward Paul, which made all the guards alert. But Paul shook his hand in return. As Paul was leaving, John tearfully told him, "I tried to stop it, but I couldn't stop it." Paul didn't understand what he meant by this. Then Paul looked at this prisoner's file, which reveals to us why John Coffey was there. Two little girls suddenly disappeared from a house. When the entire village reached the forest searching for them, they found John Coffey with both girls' bodies in his lap, repeatedly crying out, "I tried to stop it, but I couldn't stop it." Everyone assumed that John had killed both girls, and for this, John was sentenced to death. After reading this file, Paul began cleaning the electric chair with one of his colleagues. This chair was used for prisoners who had been sentenced to death. They would be given shocks until they died. In fact, only such dangerous prisoners were sent to this prison, those who were sentenced to death. The next day, that mouse came back there again. Two guards saw it and gave it biscuits to eat. Percy was also present there and thought that this mouse should be killed, but the mouse saved its life again and went inside the death row cell. Percy angrily started taking all the items out. Just then, Paul and his colleague arrived there. His colleague wanted to tell Percy that they had done the same thing yesterday. But Paul told his colleague to let him be. He'll get nicely frustrated. Percy took out all the stuff from inside, but he couldn't find that mouse anywhere. His effort was wasted too. On top of that, he would have to put all the removed items back inside. He got angry and started being rude to a guard. Just then, the guard with Paul grabbed his throat. Percy threatened him, saying, "If you do anything to me, I'll get you fired." Actually, Percy had some acquaintance with the governor here, which he took unfair advantage of. At this time, there was hardship throughout the world, which made jobs very difficult to find. For this reason, nobody wanted to put their job at risk. But Paul wasn't scared by these threats. He told Percy that he knows the extent of Percy's connections. But if he threatened any guard after today, they wouldn't sit quietly, even if it cost them their jobs. The next day when Paul was working, he heard someone laughing. Going outside, he saw that this sound was coming from the room of a prisoner named Dell. At this time, Dell had that same mouse which had been causing them so much trouble. Dell was very happy to have this mouse and explained that it was his pet. This mouse obeys every command he gives. He threw a roll, which the mouse brought back. Dell named the mouse Mr. Jingles. From a nearby cell, John Coffey said that your mouse is very intelligent. He was truly just a child in a 7-foot body. Well, soon Paul was called by the prison warden, whose name was Hal. Hal and Paul shared a really good friendship. The warden informed Paul that a new prisoner, who is extremely dangerous, was about to arrive at the jail. He was caught stealing, launched an attack. Hearing the noise, Paul rushed there, but William attacked him between his legs. Poor Paul's testicles were ruptured. On top of that, he already had an infection there. Paul collapsed right there from the pain. Somehow getting up, Paul pointed his revolver at William. But William was holding the guard in front of him. Percy was standing there too. He told Percy, "What are you looking at? Attack him!" But Percy was terrified. Percy was not only a terrible person, but also a coward. Just then, another guard arrived, who snatched the baton from Percy's hand and attacked William. After which, William was taken into custody. Everyone went back to their duties. But Paul was in severe pain and lay down on his stomach, groaning. Just then, John Coffey's voice came again, saying, "Listen to me. I need something." Somehow, despite the pain, Paul went to him. As soon as he came close, John grabbed him, pulled him toward the bars, and placed his hand exactly where Paul had the infection. Suddenly, the light from the bulb inside the cell began to intensify until it shattered. With that, Paul's pain completely disappeared. John Coffey sat inside his cell, coughing, and the next moment, something like ash began coming out of his mouth, which dispersed and vanished into the air. He asked him, "What did you just do?" John replied, "I helped you, what else? But now I'm very tired. I want to sleep." Paul went to the washroom, but he felt no pain at all. This meant he was completely healed. Now Paul's perception of John had completely changed. Paul went to the lawyer who was handling John's case. He wanted to know John Coffey's complete history, whether he had committed any murders before. "Bring it to me." Paul picked up the mouse and placed it in his hand. John took it in his hands, blew on it, and an intense light glowed between his hands. Then the same ash came out of his mouth again. Everyone was amazed to see this, and the next moment, the mouse came back to life and went to Dell. But now it was time for Dell's execution. He was seated in the electric chair. Percy was in charge of the execution this time. Actually, Percy had promised that if he was made in charge of an execution, he would transfer out of here, for which he had already applied and would get approval because of his connections. For a man sentenced to death, they would place a wet sponge on his head so the current would quickly reach his brain, causing a faster death with less suffering. But Percy deliberately placed a dry sponge on Dell's head, giving him an extremely painful death. After Dell's painful death, Paul was furious and threatened Percy that if he didn't leave soon, he would file a complaint stating that when William attacked them, Percy's hands were shaking. "You couldn't attack despite having the opportunity. You're not fit to be a prison guard, and that day when he grabbed you, you wet your pants." Percy nervously promised that he would leave this place as soon as possible. Now, as soon as Paul reached John's cell, he saw that John was crying heavily. He explained that he could feel Dell's pain, and Mr. Jingles also felt his suffering. That's why the mouse ran away from there. John also said that he was very tired and wanted to sleep. After this, we see Paul having lunch at his home. The other guards who worked with him in the prison had also come there. In conversation, they brought up John Coffey, how he had brought the mouse back to life, and Paul mentioned that he had also cured his bladder infection. Now, they were all going to help Warden Hal, whose wife had a brain tumor. Their plan was to take John Coffey to the warden's house at night. Before executing this plan at night, he was just a child. They were taking John in the truck. Then the guard asked John if he knew where they were taking him. John replied that it was to help a woman, but he did not know how he knew all this. As soon as they reached the warden's house, the warden got scared. He thought someone had escaped from prison and come there to take revenge on him. After this, he picked up his gun and became alert, but Paul explained to him that they had come to help him. Then John was taken inside to the warden's wife. The warden's wife was very ill and had now lost her mental balance. John went to the warden's wife. The warden's wife asked him what his name was. He said John Coffey, like the drink coffee, just spelled differently. He would introduce himself like this, just like children do. At that moment, he brought his mouth close to the warden's wife's mouth and drew all her illness into his body. But unlike every other time, this time that ash-like substance did not come out of his mouth, and John's condition became very bad. The warden's wife was now completely cured, but she could not remember anything since finding out about her illness. She asked John his name again. Before he could tell his name, the warden's wife said his name, meaning she remembered John's words to some extent. Now she came to John and said that she had a dream. There was a lot of darkness there, but he came to her as light and saved her. She took off the chain from her neck, put it on John, and hugged him. Then John was taken from there to the jail, but John's condition was very bad. Meanwhile, Percy was removed from death row with the promise that he would be transferred from here as soon as possible. After coming out, Percy was passing by John's cell. At that moment, John pulled Percy in and put all the warden's wife's illness inside him, which started making Percy's condition worse. He staggered to William's cell and suddenly fired a barrage of bullets at William. After this, he himself fell down and started writhing in pain. Now, the same ash started coming out of Percy's mouth. Seeing all this, Paul realized that John had done something wrong. Meanwhile, Percy was admitted to the same mental hospital. Percy was about to get his transfer here. Now Paul realized that John was innocent. He went to John and asked him what he wanted. He told John that he could send him far away where no one would find him. But John did not want that. He said he was tired of this freedom. He was tired of seeing the hatred in people's hearts for one another. He could not tolerate all this. Every day he feels people's pain, and now he wants to receive his punishment as soon as possible. Paul said, "How will I face God? I know you are innocent. How can I let you die?" But John said that by punishing him, Paul would actually be helping him. He also did not want to remain in this world. Paul asked him to tell whatever he needed. John ordered many food items and expressed a desire to watch a movie. Everyone together showed John that movie. Now the day of John's punishment arrived. When Paul and the other guards went to John, he told them that today he had a dream in which Mr. Jingles had reached the circus. There are many children there, also those two girls whom Williams had killed. Now John was seated on the electric chair. The relatives and parents of those two girls were also present there. The father of those girls spoke very harshly to John. John could feel their hatred. Paul asked John if he wanted to say any last words. John was deeply saddened that he could not save those girls. As his face was about to be covered with cloth, John told Paul that he was afraid of the dark. "Please don't cover my face." Paul accepted his request, but seeing an innocent man being killed brought tears to the eyes of all the guards. Paul shook hands with John one last time, and John silently told him that just like those two little girls were killed, many things in the world are going terribly wrong. Humans hate other humans. He couldn't bear to stay here any longer. Paul was struggling immensely while giving the order to turn on the electric chair. If you want to watch the full movie review, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel.